Jeff, one of the biggest challenges that people face, especially when they come into a new company, is the politics. So today, let's talk about how you navigate organizational politics. Let's say you're a new executive at a company. You're seasoned, you already got, your sea legs in terms of your ability to do what you're doing. But you get into this new organization and things are different. What are the first few things you need to do?
Duck,
Okay.
duck, form relationships, shut your mouth and listen. One of the things that I think mistake, in fact, I'm seeing it now. I'm working with a C-level person, and I said, you know what? I just did her 360. Not good. I said, you came in with a charge, so you put on your cape, and now you're going in and you're delivering exactly why you thought you were brought there, what you thought you were brought there to do. The problem is first of all, there's a reason why it wasn't done yet. And there's a culture there. And one of the people that I spoke to in the 360 said, she said, that it's not like we have to stay stuck in the history, but it's important to acknowledge that there was a history, right? So if you're a new person coming in and you're trying to influence the people around you and weave this web of office politics, then before you don't make the mistake of, oh, I gotta quickly show, right? I showed a 30, 60, 90, and like in 30, I'm gonna start adding value. I hope it doesn't say 30, you're going to start adding value. In 30, you need to collect information, start to form relationships, get data, acknowledge people for what they've done in the past, and then begin to chart out a plan and hold back before you start making any big moves.
Well, that's an interesting point, though, is a lot of times some executives might feel some sort of, whether it's self-imposed pressure or maybe they actually have a directive that I need to see some progress in 30 days and in 60 days.
That's
But
right.
you're saying lay low for a little bit. How do you balance laying low while still being able to show progress?
Yeah, first of all, you got to manage expectations, right? So, which starts in the interview, by the way. Well, so if they're expecting a 30-day thing that said, okay, so you transformed the environment and now we're hitting 3% better margins and whatever, then it's whoa, slow down, right? Somebody I said yesterday was having a conversation with someone, she was really struggling, she actually had to let someone go. And so her topic for coaching was how do you motivate people, right? And I said, the motivation starts at the interview. She said, he interviewed well. And I'm like, but really? He convinced you that he's a good guy, but did you ask questions like, if, like, trying to get I won't go into the details, but basically trying to get a sense of their motivation level. So why do I say all that? I say that because, like, it starts with the interview process, right? So you said, particularly becoming at the C level, you're negotiating what the expectations are going to be and what the resources that you're going to have in terms of carrying out those expectations. At that point, you should be really clear what you think you can achieve in a certain amount of time. So you do have to resist the temptation. Not only that, Raj, you're going to start to find out who the true servant leaders are in the organization and who is just trying to take advantage of this newbie that doesn't really know what the deal is yet. You get a lot of people vying for time and trying to ask you probably to do things that may or may not be in your scope. And you need to be willing, by the way, to say, hold off. I still want to really get my understanding of the whole
Yeah.
environment.
I think sometimes when people go into new organizations, they don't know where the camps are. And there could be people from multiple camps trying to pull the new individual to their camp. And that can have, devastating political consequences. And so when you say lay low and just observe,
Uh,
can you give me a structure of what someone should look for and how they should start categorizing things in their minds so that they can actually understand politics better? Because that's, I think,
it,
one of the ways to navigate is to figure out what is the lay of the land. How do you interpret what the lay of the
yeah.
land is?
First of all, ask people, right? So make sure you're having one-on-ones with all the key stakeholders. That should be one of the first things you're doing, and gather information. Tell me about your work. Tell me about what you're doing. Tell me about what your challenges are. What are your priorities? If you had a wish list, right? What would you like to see different? So definitely get all of that stuff in. But as people come up to you, or even in those one-on-ones where they're talking with you, listen for this word: me. I need. I want. Can you? You right? The people who are not servant leaders will be so focused on themselves. They're the people that you should trust less until you get additional information. But the people that are solution focused, being transparent, talking about the true issues, being showing some humbleness and vulnerability in themselves, those are the people that you're more likely to be able to trust to give you accurate information.
That's a good point, listening for specific types of words to get your spidey senses going, feel out the lay of the land. So then what happens next? So 30 days go by, you're listening, you're paying attention, you've identified who the me players are, who the real givers are. What's next?
So if you have a team, right? So I don't know what your role is, right? If you're a chief of staff, you probably don't have a team. But if you have a team, then you're probably maybe 60 days, you're pulling the team together, right? So you've gathered information, you're bringing in outside perspective, if you're new to the organization. You're gonna begin to craft a set of strategic initiatives, again, depending on the what where you're at. If you're the CEO, that I mean, it depends where you're at. And then you're going to continue with conversation and discussion. I think what you want to begin to do is identify, almost like a SWOT, identify what are some of the opportunities, what are some of the strengths of the team. One of the things that I love what I see when people come in new, and, and again, I've seen this, like where people are literally evaluating the skills of the people around them as opposed to rating them on job performance of a particular job that they've been doing, and that may be their title, that they may or may not be a good fit for them. And so if you have some people who have good values, good attitudes, good beliefs, good work ethic, right? bef- Before you throw them out or discard them, begin to start assessing what the different strengths and opportunities are for the people around you.
Okay, let's talk about the politics that can
Right.
really cause people a lot of sleepless nights. And so you go into an organization, you start getting pulled by a few different camps. Maybe someone just doesn't like you because you replaced their friend. Who knows? Who knows, right? It could be anything. What do you do to organize to help yourself get through some of these politics when people are starting to pull you and try to polarize you?
Here's an example of something that happens. Also seen this recently, where we now all tend, a lot of us, particularly large organizations, tend to work in very matrix organizations, right? And so no longer is it very hierarchical where you report to one person, et cetera. And so you could be in a situation where you have two bosses and mommy and daddy are not aligned. And so one person who you report up through, even if it's like you report to the CEO and then there's a board chair, like I've seen that too, but where you're getting mixed messages and you're getting demands. And so what you need to do is say, first of all, if you have it, is whoever does a review, okay, I need you two to get aligned. In other words, don't take on the conflicts that are occurring above you or around you with peers. Don't take people looking to put their props somewhere to say you two need to get aligned, and or let's all get in a room because I'm getting something from you and I'm getting something from this other person. And quite frankly, I want to make sure that I'm success. I want to make sure that we're doing something that's successful here. So we need to all get in the same room.
How do you know if the way you're navigating the politics is working? Let's say you're starting to have some degree of comfort in your new place. You've been there 30, 45 days, and you're thinking things are going well. How do you know they're going well and that you're not really maybe have some blinders on?
Yeah, that's a good point because a lot of organizations, people are very indirect and they won't tell you what they really think. They'll just smile and say thank you. So something that's pretty common as part of an onboarding thing is early on having probably an external like executive coach who you might be working with as part of your onboarding, interview the people around you and then speak with you and then bring people together and say, okay, so here's feedback. Here's what seems to be working, and here's what
Yeah.
seems to not be working so well.
So that's a good idea to have a sounding board so that you're not misinterpreting actions, words, things like that.
It's
Uh,
yeah, sounding board and a mini 360, right? So where your coach or the consultant is speaking with the people that are the key stakeholders and saying, so how's it going with this person? And listen, you still might have some naysayers who want to resist change, right? So just because somebody says that person is doing terrible and here's why, doesn't mean that voice should be given like automatic credibility, right? But you want to gather information, and then it's up to you and the leader, right? The new person,
yeah.
right? To make sense of it all. And if you bring everybody together, then it's for everybody to make sense of it all. And so it's not a sort of one size fits all, but it is extremely helpful to get feedback early on because remember, Rod, the cement starts to dry quickly, right? So people begin to form patterns of behavior that just keep repeating themselves. And so what you want to try to do is avoid setting up patterns of behavior that is basically going to eventually get you in trouble or it's going to be counterproductive in some way.
Well, let me flip the situation and say you've been at a company for a while. Someone new comes in, and every time I know that this is actually part of my coaching training. Every time a new person either comes or leaves a group, it's a whole new group because the dynamics have completely changed. And whatever protocols your group has had, the informal ones, the informal signals, and all the other stuff that comes with being part of a social group at a company, that's all changed now because there's a new dynamic, a new person with their own vibe. And so, what's the best way to manage navigating through something like that?
Yeah. So what I like to do is if I'm working with an executive and their team, there's a good chance that let's say we've done 6 months plus of retreats, right? Like a monthly retreat or bi-monthly retreat. So pretty common, right? And then let's say that we have that team that's pretty stable. They have a team charter, they have clear, and they all have the same North Star. They're working well together. They have their kind of team agreements about like how we're going to collaborate, communicate, make decisions together. So all good. Also, if I'm working with them, I like to have done a team disc, like a disc assessment, behavioral communication, and team Hogan assessment, like a personality assessment. And so we've done all of that work. We've had half day, 1 day workshops where we've gone through the whole thing. Everyone understands how to best communicate and collaborate. So now somebody new on the team. So the first thing to do is like, welcome to the team, right? And then they come in, maybe part of a retreat. They get out and they get a disc, offline. They get that review done offline, and then they come on the team and they present what they've learned about themselves, and then the team kind of shares where they're at, and then yeah, the team can then. This is every time a new person comes in is a great opportunity to let's look at our team agreements. Like, how is this working for us? And it doesn't necessarily need to be it's working or not working because this new person came in, but it's the trigger to say, let's see if we want to change the way that we communicate and collaborate. So I would do that. And so that way, every time somebody comes in, they are part of the new world order, so to speak, right? But they're coming into also a solid structure. So they feel held to be able to be successful.
Now, what you've described is an ideal situation when the company's management has the maturity or the awareness to be doing all of these other things. What about a situation where none of that is present? And you just have a new person that just comes in and everybody's hitting the ground running. There's no discs assessment, there's no other assessment, there's no even like co-working relationship, none of the formal tools that you make for a cohesive team environment. Because I think while that would be ideal for everyone to have, not everybody has that. And so if you're faced with a situation where you're in an environment without all of that, what do you do?
Yeah. So keywords coming to me is transparency, right? So
Transparency. Yeah.
transparency, right? So there tends to be a me, them mindset, right? When someone new comes in the group, particularly if it's a cohesive group, right? If someone new coming in, that's the me or that person. And then there's the we, like you're not part of the we yet, right? And by the way, when some new comes in, if the group is cohesive, um, there could be some sort of keep this person out. But what I would say is like the degree to which you can have conversations with the team, and this is assuming it's truly a team, meaning that they do make decisions together, as opposed to a group of folks that are report to the same person but don't necessarily make decisions together. And so what I would say is be aware of toxic conversations where people are talking about other people who aren't in the room. The moment that you find yourself in a conversation or about to have a conversation with other people that aren't in the room, and we're talking about team members, that should be the trigger to it is time to get the group together and have that conversation together. Because otherwise it just creates this weird dynamic, including a dynamic of people trying to prove themselves to the boss, and maybe sometimes it's despite other people on the team.
I think that's a pretty valuable insight, and it's a good plan that people can use to chart their waters, especially if they're new or even if they've been in a company and the dynamics are starting to change with maybe a new boss and so on. So I think the rest of it is very nuanced, right? It's going to be nuanced to the individual, and that's a great time to get a coach who could reach out to you, Leadership Coach of the Year, Jeff, and then help you get through whatever the situation is. I know you and I have done podcasts on culture as well, and I think a lot of what you've talked about ties into a company's culture to see how they help their new team members become part of the team so they feel assimilated as opposed to a new guy, a new gal, somebody coming in and always being made to feel that way.
Yeah, so I'll leave you with this. First of all, it is the people stuff really does matter, right? That actually is the hard stuff, not soft stuff.
Mhm.
I would look at it, assume good intent. Like we wake up in the
Yeah.
morning, we all want to have a good day, we all want to get along, right? Ideally. And so can we just start there? And if something isn't seems off, then ask a question like, hey, what's happening here? Just assume good intent and then try to figure out together how to move forward.
I was at a seminar earlier and it was a social media seminar, and we were talking about executives are now starting to have a much stronger presence on LinkedIn because that's where the community is. The professionals are on LinkedIn. And one of the comments was from there were a few people there that were managing the social media for like the White House or for like a major investment bank or something like that. So they've seen not just LinkedIn, but they've seen posts on all these other platforms, TikTok, Instagram, everything. It said something very interesting. They said everybody's nicer on LinkedIn, and so it ties to your comment about assume good intent.
Mhm.
And so there's always exceptions. Don't get me wrong, but for the most part, people are actually very nice,
It's great. It's like
very
when
supportive.
when they
Yeah.
communicate on LinkedIn, they had their business clothes on, right? Like it's like the image of this is a business environment,
Mm,
right? And probably generally because the people on LinkedIn are coming there for a professional community, right?
yeah.
And they're acting hopefully a little bit more like they would be
Yeah.
at a professional event.
So thank you for everybody listening. If you want to connect with an executive coach, drjeffkaplan.com. And if you want to build your LinkedIn presence using some AI powered automation while infusing your human thoughts and ideas and experiences in a very affordable way to get your presence known and build your personal brand, you can reach out to us at makemedia.ai. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you.